Our first speaker is Eneasz. This is Eneasz's third speech for ToastMasters. A fun fact about Eneasz is that he lived in Poland and Germany when he was young, and he has traveled back to Poland as well as visited Cancun. His speech is called Live Longer, Do Stuff.
In the novel Catch-22, Yossarian's friend comments that when he is bored, time seems to drag on forever. But when he's having fun, it zips by in a flash. He's determined that he wants to live as long as possible, so he fills his days with nothing but mind-numbing boredom. Now, there's been a lot of speculation as to what causes the perception of time speeding up as we age. Proposed mechanisms have included different levels of neurochemicals in the young brain versus the old brain, or how much 1 year represents as a percentage of your total life when you're older as opposed to when you're younger. This is still an open question, and there's a lot of answers, but one thing that everyone who has researched this would agree on is that Yossarian's friend had it completely wrong. He was doing it backwards. Something like constant unending boredom fades away, and that time seems to disappear quickly. Whenever we have a frequent, constant stimulus, our brains quickly tune it out. I'm willing to bet that none of you here are noticing the AC running in the background. When we first put on our clothes, we feel them, and maybe when someone draws your attention to them, but after a few seconds, that feeling disappears as well. And likewise, when I drove into work today for the several hundredth time the same route, I didn't even notice what I was doing. By the time I got to my desk, I didn't have any conscious recollection of driving in at all. That time of my life was gone. On the other hand, new, exciting experiences etch themselves into our brains and act as milestones to break up the passage of time. When we're children, we have these milestones all the time. Every day has something new and exciting for us to learn or do. Excuse me. Their lives exude adventure. But as we all know from personal experience, as we get older, these things happen less and less often. We become set in our ways and kind of settle into a comfortable zone. And this is okay. These comfort zones are stress-free. They help us recharge our batteries, but they're seductive. And if we aren't careful, days will blur into weeks, will pass into months, and before you know it, an entire year has gone by, and you can't remember what happened with that time at all. So, to extend your perception of life, it is important to do new and interesting things, often scary things. For example, attending an AIMCO Live event that you wouldn't normally sign up for. That discomfort is fairly important. Or, as Tammy's theme for today, travel also works. But you generally have to go to different locations. You can't keep going to the same location over and over again because then that starts to blur together as well. But I don't have a lot of experience with travel. I will leave the You Should Travel More speech to Dan. What I like to do is embark on epic long-term projects. Now, when starting on a long-term project, it can be daunting because there's so much before you, so you got to start small. When I started my podcast, this was all I had, a single microphone. Moderately fancy, but nothing big. I didn't have a mount, I held it up in front of my face. I didn't even have a pop filter, I just kind of talked off to the side. No matter how grand your project is, you can probably find some small step to take to first get you started in the process. You can find a used guitar, perhaps, or get a fairly cheap video camera online. The important thing is to take that first step and embark on a new journey. Now, a lot of people are scared to start new projects because they fear failure. We've taught from a very young age that failure is bad. You got to get every answer right every time. And this is terrible because it kills the experimental spirit. The heart of experimentation is failure. There's some people that walk around all proud because they succeed at everything they do, like they're wonderful. That's bad and they should be ashamed, so their lives are boring and pass by way too fast. Mountaineer Mick Fowler in his autobiography states, "Success every time implies that one's objectives are not challenging enough." If you only experience success, you are passing up opportunities that you are scared to try because you may fail them. If you haven't failed in anything in the past 6 months, you're probably not living up to your full potential. I have failed a lot. So much, in fact, that I don't have time to get into it, which is very fortunate for me. In addition to fear of failure, a lot of people fear simply sucking. That is quite a big fear. If you've ever seen little children trying almost anything, you know how much kids suck at stuff. Sometimes, but they're okay with that because they're learning, and everyone else is okay with that too. Until you get to be an adult. Sometime between childhood and adulthood, it stopped being okay to suck at things. And that is complete BS. As Jake the dog from Adventure Time says, sucking at something is the first step to becoming sort of good at something. My first episodes when I did my podcast really sucked hard. They were awful. They were so bad that when I got a little bit better over a year's time or so, I went back and redid them and destroyed all evidence, most of the evidence, so that no one would know and see how embarrassing they really were. But you have to get through that sucking phase to get better. Don't think about how much you suck. Think about how awesome you will be in the future. Now, this last point I'm not sure I even had to hit on because we are here in ToastMasters, which is kind of a safe space to suck at public speaking. But I really wanted to quote Adventure Time, so I threw it in anyway. In the past 3 years, I've been working on this podcast for about 3 years, and I've gotten pretty decent at it. And in that time, along with the podcast, I've also made some other life changes, and it really seems to have worked. The past 3 years of my life feel like they've lasted longer than the previous 10 years before that. So, I have been successful, and I believe most of you can be successful too. Except for the last 7 minutes, which really went by in a flash. But this talk will be another milestone, which will help to slow down my life over the coming years. And so I have no regrets.